What's up, and welcome back to the Disorderly Sports Report podcast, episode 2. Really good show for you this week, so I won't spend too much time on this intro, but I do have some storylines to cover, things that we didn't get to in the interview, things that we didn't get to in the after show with Monica. We pre-record these things, so a lot of these interviews that I try to make them as topical as possible, but obviously when I'm recording this intro, it's my sort of last-ditch effort to cover anything that we didn't cover in the other interviews. So, top story, I think, is Serena Williams, U.S. Open. She obviously loses the U.S. Open, but that's not really the story. The story is her getting penalized, and then it becomes a whole question of sexism and things like that. Generally speaking, and this is just my take, I think the world is too sensitive about everything these days. Like, is it possible that the umpire is being sexist in his decision with Serena Williams? Sure. Is it also possible that, maybe she got, she's on the bad end of a call or something? And that's all it was. It had nothing to do with her gender or race or anything like that. Sure, right? Like, let's not pretend like it's impossible or some sort of subconscious sexism that he didn't even realize he was dealing with crept into his mind, and that's why he made these decisions, or we were all raised this way in society. She could have just got screwed. We see people get screwed all the time in sports by a bad call. Like, if an umpire calls a strike, even though it's outside, is that a situation where it's like, oh, well, this guy, he's from the Dominican Republic, so the umpire is obviously racist against Dominican Republics, people from the Dominican Republic? I don't think that's always the case. You know what I mean? So it is possible, sure, that he was influenced by his societal view of women, and women shouldn't mouth off and shouldn't be loud or aggressive. That's very possible, too, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, it seems the thing that bothers me is Serena was going to lose the U.S. Open anyway, it seemed like, right? She got dominated in the first set. She was starting to get some momentum, but the other girl was still playing very well. And this is actually a perfect example of the problem with this story. I don't even remember the other girl's name, so let me look it up right now. And I will also say that I'm not a tennis person per se. So, Naomi Osaka, and she's from Japan. She's the first Japanese man or woman to win the U.S. Open. I remember hearing that stat. But like I said, I'm not a big tennis guy. Novak Djokovic won too. It's kind of a side story. I do obviously know and like Serena, and I basically was raised on her and Venus just dominating tennis, and the fact that they still are in 2018 is crazy. So maybe not dominating, but yeah, pretty much still pretty much the best in the world, on any given day at any given match. So I don't know. It's just interesting. But to speak to the actual event, so obviously I think she lost her cool. You could say it's a bullshit call. I guess you're not allowed to coach in tennis, and her coach was giving her hand signals, which he admitted to doing afterwards. So it's not like that's, there's no controversy there. He was doing it, whether she saw it or not, whatever. But I guess the controversy is that the umpires usually don't call this. It's like an unspoken rule. It's definitely a rule that you can't do that, but it's never enforced. So why was it enforced against Serena? Why was it enforced in a U.S. Open final? That's the question, I guess. But that was the first penalty. Second one's when she smashed the racket, and then she was just going off on him for the entire, like, in between points. I watched the whole thing. In between points, in between sets, like she was really, she kept, every chance she got, she kept going back saying that he's a thief. How dare he accuse her of being a cheater? He's a liar. He owes her an apology. All this crazy stuff. So she was really going off on him constantly, and then eventually, I guess it went too far. I think when she called him a thief was like the last straw, but it was really just the constant, barrage of insults and whatever, and demanding an apology that led him to take the third offense. First offense is a warning. Second offense is a point taken away. Third offense is a whole game, which if you think about that, that's a wild penalty. And I guess just to do that in the U.S. Open is I guess unheard of. So I understand why it's such a big story. I remember watching it as a big story, but I will say, just so it's not all negative, there's a few good things that I liked as a takeaway from this. One, I liked her coach being like, yeah, I know I was cheating. I'm not a liar. I'll say I was coaching, but everyone coaches. He said, I think he specifically called out Nadal's coach, and he was like, every single point in Nadal's match, every point he was giving out, coaching instructions, little tips and stuff from the crowd. And I guess every coach does this. I can't speak on that because I don't watch enough tennis, but he seemed very frank about every coach doing this, and it's never called. He said that he's never been called on it. He's never seen anyone get called on it. It's basically just, allowed, even though it's technically against the rules. So I like the fact that he was honest about that instead of denying that he did it, because there's video evidence of him doing it. The other thing I liked is he said that the number one thing wrong with tennis, in his opinion, is that athletes aren't allowed to express themselves. It's a very buttoned-up sport. You should be able to have emotional outbursts. It shouldn't be a penalty. Like, if you smash your racket, that shouldn't be a penalty. It should just be, not even smashing the racket, I guess that should be, but I think he was saying in general, just like when you are emotional and yelling about stuff and whatever, instead of giving you a bad rap, it should just be part of the game. You hear people talk shit in all the other major sports. So that's interesting as well. And then, of course, the trophy ceremony was wild stuff. I mean, the crowd booed during the entire thing. I felt really bad for Osaka. She is this really quiet person. I guess they said that this is her being more open and talkative than normal. Like I said, I'm not too familiar with their past, but for her, this is her being outgoing. It's crazy to me. She's extremely quiet. She basically apologized to the crowd for having it not go, the way they wanted, even though she just won her first U.S. Open, first major championship. It's crazy. So it was very endearing to hear her talk about that. Serena, to her credit, basically said no more booing. Like I don't want to take a moment away from Osaka. Kind of late for that after she did take the moment away from Osaka, but I mean at that point she handled it the best way she could. It was nice. It was a good moment. I enjoyed that part of it, I guess. I don't know. It was exciting for me. It's a hell of a story because I'll watch tennis. I think it's exciting, but it's not usually a sporting event that's going to get my blood boiling, and in this case it did. So shout out to tennis. I feel like that's sometimes that kind of controversy is good. It's going to make you tune in for the next Osaka match. It's going to make you tune in for the next Serena match. Not that she needed help with that, but it was definitely fun. I liked it. On to football briefly, because we don't really talk about it in the interview, obviously. Good interview coming up with Steve Perrault. He is of the Section 10 podcast, Barstool Sports. I've been listening to that show, I don't know, for years. They release 2 episodes a week during the baseball season. Obviously, this season, the Red Sox are doing great. So we'll talk about the Red Sox, talk about him working for Barstool, sort of. He's got a weird sort of dynamic going on and all sorts of things. We get into everything. So I'll talk to Steve Perrault. That'll be coming up in the middle. And then, of course, the after show with Monica of Outside the Bubble fame for anyone who listens to the MMA Mad podcast, my former podcast, or plenty of the stuff on the Disorderly, too. Monica's made a lot of appearances. So that's always fun. We'll get to that, too. But just to cover sort of week 1 football, because we didn't really get a chance to talk about it in the other 2 segments, the Cowboys look terrible. Terrible. I said it last week too. I was like, this team, I don't see them doing well. I just can't see it. And it's because of the offense. It's because Dak Prescott is basically check down Dak. If he throws it more than 8 yards down the field, it's going to be inaccurate, right? So that annoys me. The receiving core is just, first of all, it's brand new. So even if you feel, particularly strong about some of the talent on that team, whether you think that Hearns is the guy or I don't know, Tavon Austin or whoever. I mean, I don't know how high you can be on Terrence Williams or Cole Beasley, although those are the 2 established names that are still there. But once again, no Jason Witten, no Des Bryant, who went off on Twitter basically begging to be on, well, he said he wasn't begging, but throwing his hat in the mix to be on the Patriots, and I would love that personally for him and for the Patriots, actually. But, so it's just, even if you believe in the talent of these wide receivers, which I don't know if I do, but even if you do, Dak can't hit them, and they're brand new. So it's going to take some while to get the offensive scheme down. They played some preseason games, but this all sort of came together. And by the way, the offensive line has holes in it where there weren't holes before. You have, Travis Frederick who's out, all sorts of things. So you take all that into the equation, and it seems like we're not going to mount any offense. Well, guess what? We didn't mount any offense. The defense actually did pretty good, I thought, to hold the Panthers to 16 points. The Panthers have a pretty dynamic offense. I think the defense actually did well. Whatever. Shout out to the defense. They did a good job. I'm pretty impressed with them, at least satisfied with them. The offense got nothing going. Like even when we finally got the 8 points, it was after so many attempts, and then finally Zeke gets in the end zone. We get the 2-point conversion with Dak. So whatever. But there's basically one good moment in an entire game of non-moments, and that can't feel good if you're a Cowboys fan. So I'm very upset about that. As I'm recording this, we're wrapping up the New York Jets versus Detroit Lions game, and the Jets just squashed them. I don't know who saw that coming. Between the Jets squashing them, by the way, Sam Darnold throwing a pick on his very first pass, pick 6 actually, that was funny to me because it's such a Jets moment. But then what is not a Jets moment is them just squashing the Lions. Now the Lions aren't Super Bowl bound, but they're not terrible, and to do it in Detroit as a rookie quarterback, very impressive. First game rookie quarterback, not only to do it, but to have that bad moment at the beginning and then to bounce back from that bad moment to win, and not only win, but destroy the Lions. That was incredible. The other big surprise, I think, was Tampa Bay. Pretty much everyone's mortal lock was Tampa Bay losing to the Saints. They were in New Orleans. Tampa Bay is supposed to suck. Ryan Fitzpatrick was starting the game because Jameis Winston's still suspended, so you had like this perfect storm of basically Tampa Bay having no chance, and they did great. I mean, to be fair, they let up a lot of points to the Saints. It was a closer game than it should have been. I think they said the highest opening day total score in NFL history. I believe. I think I saw that somewhere. But yeah, Tampa Bay dominated. That was also a big surprise, especially from a gambling perspective. The story, though, besides the Browns tying, because the Browns tying ended up being a crazy story. It's just such a Browns move to, I mean, it's good. It's a win for them. That's better than they would have done last year. It's literally better than they ever did last year by getting that tie against the Steelers, too, who are elite. You know, with or without Le'Veon Bell, Steelers are a very difficult opponent. So the Browns tying them was a win for the Browns, a loss for the Steelers, right? But also, it was just the most Browns thing ever to basically have the game-winning field goal lined up and then just get it blocked. I mean, I can't wait for this team to get a win because that city's going to go nuts. Like they could be 1-14-1, and that city's going to freak out with that one win. So I'm very excited about that. Hard not to root for the Browns. But the story ended up becoming the Sunday night game, Aaron Rodgers, Green Bay Packers versus Khalil Mack and the Chicago Bears. Khalil Mack did his job. He had like the best, I think they said the best performance stat-wise ever, I think. It was something ridiculous, and especially about the amount of, he's on a snap count, limited plays, sort of. He's supposed to be anyway, but he came in and obviously dominated. I think he is going to be such an impact player for the Bears. He was in Oakland. I think the Bears actually have a better system for him. I don't know. The Bears are definitely a team to watch out for. Now, obviously, it's a big disappointment because Aaron Rodgers came out. They were up, 20-0 when Aaron Rodgers came out at halftime, and then all of a sudden, Aaron Rodgers comes back in heroically, leads the charge, brings them all the way back, wins by 1 point. I hate that because I hate Aaron Rodgers. That's more of a Cowboys beef. I feel like there's been a lot of Cowboys Packers tension in the past 5-6 years, just playoff meetings, things like that, or knocking us out of the playoffs, the playoff contention in the regular season, whatever it is. I'm not a big Packers fan. Definitely not a big Aaron Rodgers fan. However, the dude is terrifying. He's the most. I think people talk a lot about Brady and stuff. When I watch Aaron Rodgers play, maybe it's because it's happened to me so many times, but I just have no doubt that he is going to succeed in that fourth quarter game-winning drive. He's going to succeed in that drive more than any other quarterback in the league. That's how I feel. Like I said, it might be because of all the times that it's burned into my brain when he did it to the Cowboys. But he's a beast, man, and I don't know how bad the injury was. It seems obviously didn't stop him from excelling in the second half of that game, bringing him all the way back. But who knows? That tightens up on you next couple of days. We'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll see if he plays week 2. I'm sure he will, but see if he's still limited. See if he's favoring that leg. It definitely hurt his mobility a little bit, but obviously didn't hurt his offensive output or his efficiency or anything like that. But Aaron Rodgers is a beast. I hate to say that because I do not like him as a player. I don't know the man Aaron Rodgers, but I do not like him as a player. He basically haunts my nightmares. So that'll do it. Very exciting week 1. I don't know if anything exciting is going to happen in the Rams-Oakland game. Hopefully, well, I hope something happens, but I'm not going to be able to talk about it in this podcast because I'm recording it right now and the game just started. So, but yeah, that'll do it. I hope you guys enjoy the interview with Steve Perrault of the Section 10 podcast and Bleacher Report, Section 10's Barstool podcast. We get into all that. We'll explain it all. A lot of Red Sox talk, a lot of just baseball playoff talk coming up. And then stick around for the after show with Monica. Always a fun time. And that'll do it for episode 2 of the Disorderly Sports Report podcast. Rate, review, subscribe, tell a friend. Like us on Facebook at Disorderly ENT. Follow us on Twitter at Disorderly Media. I'm on Twitter at Nick Rizner, NickRizner. And yep, here's Steve Perrault. Enjoy. Hey, what's up, man?
Hey, what's going on?
Not too much. Welcome to the show. I appreciate the time. Obviously, it's right in the middle of a playoff race, and the Red Sox are playing right now, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Sale night. That's a big one.
I know, exactly. So we'll get into all that, obviously, but I'm glad this happened when it did because it was kind of a milestone day for Section 10. We had been talking about doing this interview for past couple weeks, and it ended up being on the release day of the Alex Cora interview, which from what I gathered from the intro of the show was the very first interview that was ever actually sanctioned by the Boston Red Sox. You guys have had big guests on, but this one was kind of co-signed by the Red Sox. It was in the dugout. You were talking to the manager. The timing was great. Tell me about that experience. What did it mean to you?
Yeah, it was awesome. I mean, honestly, it didn't even feel like we were at a place. I know we've done a lot of interviews at this point. We've gotten Pedro. I go down the line, Joe Kelly in the studio, Mo Vaughn. But something about this one was different. Obviously, being in person, meeting Cora, being able to do it in the dugout was awesome. But it just felt it felt normal. And I think that kind of shows where we're at with this podcast now, where it's not really like it's a huge deal. That should feel like it's like insane. But I just think that's kind of where we should be right now. And I'm glad we were able to do it. Alex was great. Honestly, there was so many things we didn't get to. Like we didn't really go into it with a big game plan. I'm skeptical of anything involving the Red Sox because the relationship hasn't been terrible, but it's also been hesitant, I would say, towards us and towards Barstool. So the fact that we were able to get it is a big deal, and I think it went really well.
Well, that is sort of the middle ground with Barstool, where obviously that provides a lot of access. Barstool is huge, but also it is sort of the bad boy of the media world, so I feel like a lot of people are hesitant to get involved with them. But how do you sort of weigh the pros and cons of having Barstool attached to your podcast, but then also, maybe it having a bad rep in the mainstream?
Yeah, that is kind of kills me. I mean, I'm on the ultimate, both sides of the totem pole there, if that makes any sense, because I work for Bleacher Report full time and I do the podcast with Barstool, which is the ultimate playing for both sides there. But it's been something that's helped us. It's helped us get filling, and it's helped us with Veritech, and it gets you in the door. I think Jared has obviously been doing this for a long time now, and I'm glad we were able to link up and really make this show what it is, because now it's at the point where they kind of come to say no. It benefits them a lot because we're not out here to do these interviews and try to show people up. We're trying to make a good product, and we're trying to get good stories and get good content, and we're not in the dugout pointing mics at Alex Cora's face, being like, what the hell was up with this decision? And like, I can't believe that. Like, that's not what we're here to do. So I think people get what we're all about. The Barstool thing can have a certain effect, but I honestly think it's helped us for the most part. And we've been able to take it and make it something special.
Well, I wanted to ask actually about the dynamic with you and Barstool, and you mentioned Bleacher Report as well. How does that work with Section 10? So obviously the podcast is a Barstool property, but are you considered a Barstool employee, part-time, full-time? Are you sort of like, how does that work? I don't need to know who like signs your paychecks, but how does it work with the dynamic?
With Barstool, it's the ultimate part-time thing. I mean, it's really just a podcast. Like I run social accounts. We have this kid Ozzy. He does a lot of our graphics, some of our promos. He helps a lot when I'm at Bleacher Report. But yeah, BR is my for sure full-time thing. I lead the trending coverage for the app at Bleacher Report. It's a lot of fun. I mean, we have a great group of people over there, and it's just a really cool place to work. I mean, we got a basketball court at the office. Like that's awesome. And it's close enough to Barstool that the days we record, Monday and Wednesday, I then come into Bleacher Report and work 3 to 11. So they've been very helpful with my schedule, because honestly, it's something that I don't recommend to anybody trying to balance the two. It's not healthy, honestly. Like I don't live the healthiest life. Like it's really just going between Barstool, Bleacher Report, and sleep. But it's helped. I mean, it's helped me grow my career, and it helped me grow audience on Twitter, I guess you could say. But it's something that it's not it's hard to do. I'm not gonna lie. It's not something that I would really recommend, but I've been able to do it. I think it helped that I was doing the podcast before I started at Bleacher Report. So the fact that I was already doing the show and they were cool with it really helped. If that wasn't the case, if I started doing a Barstool podcast like midway through my BR career, that probably would have been a little different. It might have been shot down, but both sides are cool with it. And, I've been able to pull it off. And at the end of the day, everybody knows it's a huge passion of mine. It's what keeps me going. And I'm glad that people are, cool with me doing it.
Well, it almost seems like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I understand from your role, you're basically doing almost like behind the scenes stuff for Bleacher Report, where you're doing social media and things like that. You're not actually like writing. So I feel like if you're writing as a baseball writer or whatever, they'd probably frown upon the whole bias, like Red Sox sort of homer angle, I would assume.
Yeah, for Bleacher Report, we do everything with the app. Like we basically make that, we try to provide the best experience for any, sports app out there. There's a couple others, The Score, ESPN's recently, but it's something I enjoy doing. We send out alerts to millions of people every day, and it's a lot of fun. And it's just a great group of people. Like it's a great bunch to be around, and that, it obviously pays the bills, and it's just a fun place to be. And it's a great combo with the podcast, which is, I would say, more of the entertainment part of my day to day. But I think it's a good balance right now. I mean, who knows what the future holds, but I think for now, this works for sure. Again, it's weird. Anytime I mention that, I'm affiliated with Barstool and Bleacher Report, you get the weirdest looks. It's like a confused dog kind of looking at you. Like it is a strange concept, but it's something that I'm just glad has been able to work out so far.
Yeah, for sure. So first of all, we obviously got into the president and all this stuff too, but I do want to talk about your history a little bit. You work for Bleacher Report, you work for Barstool, you do all this stuff. Most people probably know you, at least in the forefront from Section 10, the Red Sox podcast presented by Barstool. But let's go back to the beginning. Young Steve Perrault, a fan of the Red Sox, maybe some ideas of going into the media world. How do you go from that kid to where you are today?
That's a great question. I think from the jump, I wanted to do this kind of stuff. I think early on, I knew I wanted to either be involved with radio or involved in sports in some capacity. I think a lot of kids just have that same idea, but don't really have the work ethic to do it. School's the worst. I understand why we need to do it. And I totally get that in the long run, it can benefit us and everything. But every night I would just, I'd rush through homework, watch the Red Sox or the Patriots. And it's something that just, was in my blood from the jump. I think a lot of that was from my dad. He's the same as me in that regard. And so, 5, 6, 7-year-old Steve was already ready to work in sports. And I was like, great, I got another 15 years of school ahead of me. That's going to be a lot of fun. But once you get through that aspect of it, I did a sports radio show at Endicott College. I think that is really when I realized I wanted to do this kind of stuff and to make it, try to make a career out of it. Even where I am now, I'm still, obviously trying to grow as much as I can from the position I'm in now. Podcasts are so tricky. My least favorite line is when it's like, oh yeah, everybody has a podcast. Yeah, but not everybody puts the amount of work into it that'll make it a successful podcast. That's what differentiates, just some random podcast in a basement versus what we do, which is nonstop. I don't think there's no time you can really be quote unquote off. Like you need to be on at all times, ready to make content at all times. And that's something a lot of people aren't willing to do. You got to sacrifice a lot of your social life. And it's been a lot of fun. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like I've loved doing it. And I'm in a position now where, I've been able to grow an audience on Twitter. Twitter's like the best and the worst place in the world at the same time. It's such a bizarre place. But it's what I wanted to do from the jump. So just kind of glad it's, all the long nights of watching the Red Sox and staying up, studying the team and then kind of working on my skills in high school and college on the radio side has kind of gotten to this point.
Yeah, it's awesome. I always kind of liken it to, like becoming a rapper or something. Like the cost of entry is so low, you don't even know how to play an instrument or anything. Like you can just jump right in. You can jump right into podcasting. But like you said, it's almost, I think people almost look at that like, oh, it's easy to get into podcasting because the cost of entry is so low, when the opposite is true because there's so many just crappy podcasts to like separate yourself from that pack of just shitty like Mom's Basement podcast. You have to be so elite and like you said, just even be willing to do it as often as you can. And I feel like that is what separates it. So in a way, it's the easiest thing in the world to do, but also the hardest to excel at.
Yeah, you really do get both sides of it because I think there's a lot of people out there that just kind of assume, that me, Jared, and Coley just show up in the studio and just kind of start BSing for an hour and call it a day. There's a lot of work that goes into it. Coley's been a phenomenal addition to the show. I love the kid. He's his mind is the greatest. I mean, he thinks of stuff on the spot better than basically anyone I know. And you need the chemistry. You need everything to kind of fall into place. You need to work your ass off to get guests and to line them up for when you record, which is only a 2-3 hour gap course of an entire week. So there's a lot of work that goes into it. I know people have a decent idea of how much goes into it, but I think that is what differentiates a podcast that does well and just a podcast that's out of your basement.
Yeah, and speaking of the history of Section 10, you mentioned Endicott College. I believe that's where Krabis went as well, right?
Yeah, we don't quite count it because he did night classes. So I know Pete Blackburn, former host there of Section 10, he actually did go to Endicott. And I met Pete there. We weren't friends by any means, but Pete did a radio show, so I got to meet him. But yeah, Jared did night classes, never saw him there. I actually had reached out to him via LinkedIn, and that's kind of how this all got started because I had no other way to get in touch with him, and I knew that I would be able to bring my quote unquote talents to the show and kind of figured it would be a good fit. So that's kind of how it got kicked off. But Jared did go to Endicott, but we do get on his case that he did the night classes and not the actual staying there for 4 years.
Well, it's funny because I feel like you see that you, Blackburn, and Krabis all went to Endicott, and you're like, oh, they must have met. They probably like lived on the same floor or whatever, all got into the same podcast again together. Yeah. So the fact that it developed after is super interesting because I'm sure, obviously, you're all Red Sox fans, and obviously Pete Blackburn's no longer with the show either, but how did you end up start doing this podcast, the three of you? Like, was this something that you had in mind? You reached out to Krabis because you knew that he had similar interests as far as the going into this media world or whatever? Like, how did the three of you come together if you weren't all friends in college?
Yeah, it's a weird dynamic, honestly, because, like you said, you just assume that we all, hey, we're going to do a show when we graduate and it was going to be great. And then we, cheers a Miller Lite. But no, it didn't really go down like that. It was Pete and Jared's idea initially, before I knew Pete, but not like that. I mean, we weren't friends. I think Pete and Jared became friendly after college, and there were a couple of guys at Barstool that kind of helped them start the show, the podcast. Jared, obviously big Red Sox guy, was ready to get this show going, and podcasts weren't as big a deal back then. I mean, this was only a short 3-4 years ago, and they weren't nearly as popular as they are now. And it was their idea. They got it going. It was around episode 10. They had Gary Streisky on, who's my guy. I love Gary Streisky. I wish he was still with Ness and doing sideline. Obviously, Garen Austin is not the biggest fan of her, but that is when I realized the podcast was a thing, because Gary was their first guest, and I think Streisky tweeted about it, and I saw that, and I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. And so I checked it out, started listening, and the first thing that caught me was the intro, and the fact that they had the PA guy at Fenway doing their intro, I thought was the coolest thing ever, and that gave it this authentic feel. I didn't know much about Jared, honestly. I knew more about Pete because of going to school with him. And so I looked more into Jared's. He was kind of growing his brand in the Red Sox world. And it hit me. I knew I could help with that show. Things were kind of winding down with me at Nesson. I had been there for about 2 years. We could kind of tell that we were separating. It was just a relationship that wasn't really meant to be. There's a lot of people there that just pissed me off, to be quite frank. And I'm sure I wasn't the nicest to them, but it just wasn't the best relationship. I was able to grow a lot there and learn a lot, especially on the editing side. And that's when I, approached Jared, hit him up on LinkedIn, and was like, hey man, like, if you guys need a producer, like I can be that guy. I sent him some stuff I had edited at Nesson. And he, saw my Twitter, had very little following at that point, but he could tell by the content I was putting out there that it was legitimate and that could help the show. I'm sure he would not think we are where we are today. It's about 200 episodes later, but yeah, it just worked out from the jump. I mean, Pete and I kind of butted heads. I think the longer we did that show, the more Pete and I kind of became fake rivals and real rivals, because I think Pete kind of realized that Jared and I, our obsession for the Red Sox was a little next level, and we have solid chemistry, even though Jared drives me crazy. Realized it was kind of going that way, and Pete's dedication is with that brunch podcast, which him and DJ do a good job at. Such a quirky show, but it works for them, and that's kind of how we've eventually ended up to here. But there were a lot of little steps to get to this point, but it wasn't a smooth journey by any means. It was kind of a weird. The initial meeting was at Pete's mom's house. That's where we recorded the first 80 episodes, and we've kind of gone on from there.
Do you sometimes find it difficult working with co-hosts, just even from a scheduling perspective, nothing else? Because I feel like that was a huge problem with this podcast, the one I had before that. It's almost like an additional interview you have to worry about each week, an additional person to schedule into the, as opposed to just hopping on the mic whenever you can. At least that's how I felt. Or do you feel like it actually alleviates some of the pressure of producing a new episode because you have someone helping to carry that load? Yeah,
I think specifically with Jared, it's the kid comes ready every week. I think he retains a lot of knowledge. Not outside of baseball. He knows nothing outside of baseball, really. But once you get him in the studio, we actually hit record and start rolling, it just works, and it does alleviate some of the pressure, knowing that I've never felt like I've had to really. The only time I felt like I had to quote unquote carry the load is when Pete really just showed up, hadn't watched the Red Sox in a week, and you could just kind of tell his effort wasn't quite there. It'd be hockey season. That's when I kind of felt like I had to pick up the slack, but. No, Jared's always ready to go. I think that helps. It's scheduling is not easy. I mean, it helps that at Barstool we have a good chunk of time blocked off to record Monday and Wednesday from noon to 2. That's not overly normal, but they give us that time knowing that there's sometimes, Jared might be coming back from New York, or I might be a little late. It gives us a gap to get in a solid hour or even 45 minutes if we have to cut it kind of short. But no, I think all things considered, it's just that the dedication has to be there. I mean, we saw it with Feidelberg. Feitz is a great guy. I just don't think this show was quite built for him. I think it was a dedication he probably didn't think how he didn't. I don't think he initially knew how much you really have to put into it. And in all honesty, I mean, he didn't quite need the show. I don't think the show necessarily needed him. because I think he fits well on KFC radio. I think he's kind of built for that, write an occasional blog here and there, go on the road, do podcasts on the road with Clancy. And I think that's kind of his sweet spot. He loves the Red Sox, but I think, what I'll give Coley credit for is he shows up every week. He's ready to go. He's very good on the spot. And so it helps. It helps having people like Coley and Jared around you. I mean, it's like any other team. You want to have talented people around you. And I can rip Jared all I want for this, that, the other thing. We have the biggest love-hate relationship of all time, but the kid comes ready to go, and he knows what he's talking about, and he knows that he's going to get the same from me, and we know Coley's going to provide the humor, and also, he'll get serious when he needs to, and I think you just need the right dynamic and you need the right dedication. Those are the two probably biggest things to make a successful show.
Well, it does seem like you guys are hitting your sweet spot, and I've been listening since the Blackburn days. But I think the big difference, too, in addition to the chemistry being right with you, Carabas, and Coley, I feel like the other thing that really helps is the fact that you guys are in studio because and it works, obviously, and I know I understand the irony of me talking to you over Skype, and that's what people are listening to right now. But when you have people in studio together, and I'll mix in when I can anyway, these in-person interviews, I feel like just the sound quality alone, just for me anyway, like that's a night and day difference.
Yeah, I think it makes a world of difference anytime you can get the right, quality equipment, you can get a studio that backs you, like Barstool does. That helps a lot. Honestly, like we did this show, as you're well aware of, through like Google Hangouts for a good amount of time. I mean, once I moved to New York, we weren't going to do shows in Pete's basement anymore, and that just didn't make much sense. I'll give each of us credit though. I think we were solid at just staying committed with the show, because there was a good amount of time there where we didn't have a consistent record day. And so we're just kind of texting each other like, we should probably record today, we should probably record, then. And that's another huge part of this. It's, audio quality is great. And like, it keeps me up at night if it doesn't sound quite right. My mic wasn't perfect for the Corey interview, and that pissed me off, but we'll have another interview with him, which is fine. But yeah, I mean, that's something that can kind of, drive you nuts if the quality is not great. But most importantly, I think you just need you need a schedule that works, and you need the right equipment to do it. That's another thing when we talk about people that do these podcasts that just think that, you can just show up and just do it. There's a lot more that goes into it, and the equipment and the quality is a huge part of that.
For sure. And I know there's been a lot of talk about your favorite guests as well. Kurt Schilling, Paige Martinez, people get thrown out there a lot. Movan, obviously, recently. Do you have a favorite moment, though, something outside of a specific guest that stands out to you, whether it was in a particular experience or whatever, something that basically was like this surreal, like, oh, man, like I guess we're here now?
Yeah, the one that sticks out was the first winter weekend that we went to. It was me, Jared, and Pete. And we didn't really know what we were getting into. I think those can be the best experiences, kind of like a vacation when you're going to a new place and you're just kind of like, well, let's see what happens here. Let's just explore the town, see what we got. It's kind of uncharted territory. I love that stuff. And so we went to Foxwoods not really knowing what to expect. And I think that was the first time we realized the impact the show was having, because there were a lot of people coming up to us, wanting to take pictures and all that. And talking about catchphrases from the show, and we're like, holy crap, like this is really taking off. But the one moment that really sticks out, because we kind of got invited to this like some like pregame with some of the players at one of their like hotel suites, and we were talking with Rick Porcello, and he was coming off of his 2015 stinker of a season, and he was just like, we had like a heart-to-heart conversation with him, and he knew of Jared. I think he knew of the podcast, so he vaguely knew of me and Pete, but I really think he only really knew Jared. And even at that, I don't think it was like too in depth. And yet he just gave us this, like, it almost felt like an interview. We were just kind of shooting the breeze with him. And he was talking about how much it hurt him every time he'd come off the mound to get booed, and how much, like, people don't realize how much that sticks with you, how he'd stay up late at night, how he wouldn't get to bed till 5, 6 in the morning because he's thinking about how he let the fans down. And he was just kind of spilling it all out in front of us. And it was like, whoa, this is deep. Like, you don't normally see the players like this. And I think that's when it hit us that we had something special, because he wouldn't have ever told that to like the media. He wouldn't have given them that kind of access. And yet it just kind of felt like we were having a normal conversation over a couple of beers. And that's the kind of vibe that we want to give on the show. Like, we're not here to bust any of the guest balls. I mean, we're trying to put a good product together. We're trying to, put you in a position to kind of lift you up, make you look good. And And if there's anything you want us to take out, we're always ready to do that. But that was the one moment really that sticks out where we walked out of there and kind of looked at each other like, whoa, that was that that was the first time we kind of realized we had something special going.
Right, and honestly, I came from the MMA background. Like I had an MMA podcast for 4 years, and that's a little bit more raw. But just dealing with athletes in general, when you're talking to these people, a lot of times you do get, just because 90% of the interviews they do are these like raw Q&As, you almost get that response. You have to break them out of that mold a little bit. And when you have a conversational style interview format like you guys have, I feel like it gets people to open up, and it gets more the real person than like, I got to work on that in practice this week and whatever. Just like the bullshit, like very direct answers they give in press conferences. I feel like you guys do cut through that with the style of show you have.
Yeah, honestly, like that's, if you were to pinpoint one thing that gets me the most excited in life, it's honestly probably when you have a guest that's just giving you genuine answers, and that we've completely taken the door, we've gotten rid of that layer that's up. There's always a wall up basically with all these guys, and it's been built there from the media. It's been built there from their PR team that says, answer this question this way, answer that question that way. My favorite thing ever is when that wall is down, and it's so clear it's down because we're having these genuine conversations that guys almost forget that we're recording. Now, again, we're not trying to like put anyone in a tough situation or anything like that. But when you're just kind of, giving normal answers that you would give to like family members and that you would give to your buddies that you would not give to the media, that's what I love. I live for that. Like that's the content we want. That's the stuff we want to provide to our listeners, because they're not going to get that elsewhere. We know that they're going to be comfortable giving that to us. We know they're going to want to give it to us because we're going to want to, promote the hell out of them. And we're not going to immediately then run to, try to clip the audio together to make them sound bad. Those are the things I love, because it honestly, it's as genuine an interview as you can get. Brock Holt gave us a lot of that. Mo Vaughn gave us a lot of that. Kurt Schilling, obviously, not surprisingly, gives us a lot of, candid takes. But that's what I love the most, honestly, when we do these interviews. Yeah,
I feel like Schilling, when he's in a situation where he's not supposed to speak his mind, he does anyway. So there's definitely no risk of that.
There's no way with Schilling that you're going to get some some PR friendly BS from him. He's always going to be ready to shoot it, which I like.
Right, and obviously I can only speak for myself, but I just have zero interest in listening to that other style of interview where it's basically just those stock answers. Like, I don't even understand why they really do it. Like when people tune into like the press conferences after a game, and it's kind of, occasionally you'll get a nugget of information, but for the most part, it's like, what they're going to say. They're very predictable responses. So I think the only show that's even worth listening to is the show that you guys are doing, and obviously people in your same vein. But we should talk a little bit of baseball, because we talk about all podcasts so far. So this is also a milestone day, as you mentioned before, because we have the return of Chris Sale once again. He's pitching right now. I'm missing it. I have no idea. Do you have it on in the background or something? I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what's going, because he threw an inning. Let's see, 26 pitches in the first inning. Workman came in the second, and Sale is throwing in the bullpen right now. So it's kind of a weird. Is sitting back down after throwing.
So he already came out of the game and he's still throwing the bullpen?
Yeah, it's kind of, so this was, and this is kind of what Cora had told us that was going to happen, that Sale was going to be the quote unquote starter for this game. And, or like the, whatever they call it. Whatever the Rays are doing there, like the
bullpen games or whatever.
The bullpen game starters. So like whatever the word is, I'm blanking on it, but the opener, that's what it is. Big word there. I can't believe I forgot that one, but yeah, it's kind of unique what they're doing with Sale, because I thought he was going to go 3 or 4 innings. He ends up going 1, and then he's throwing in the bullpen. A little odd, but honestly, they clearly want to be as safe with him as they possibly can. I'm kind of pissed just as a fan, because I honestly want this guy to get the Cy Young. Chris Sale deserves it. He's deserved it for a while now, and I got a feeling that they might lean Verlander's way if Sale doesn't get enough innings here in September.
Yeah, I would think so. And I think that Alex Cora and I think even Chris Sale to an extent made it pretty clear that they would rather the World Series. Obviously, I think that's universal, but it's not guaranteed. I think they'd rather whatever is best for the team rather than the individual award, and I understand that. But obviously, if you're going to look me in the eye and tell me that he doesn't want the Cy Young, you're crazy. Like, I'm sure he does.
Exactly. He wants to win the Cy Young, and that was why I made sure I asked Cora that, because we knew we had limited time with them. I was like, honestly, like, do you guys talk about this? Like, is this something that Sale has mentioned? And And, he said that they hadn't talked about it, but Chris Sale wants to win a Cy Young. I mean, he's going to end up in the Hall of Fame. He doesn't want to be, on the list of guys like Schilling and Nolan Ryan that, best pitchers that haven't won a Cy Young. You want to be classified with the guys that are known as the best pitchers in the game. And to do that, you win the Cy Young. So hopefully he gets it. Tonight was weird. I mean, one inning is strange. I didn't think it was going to be like that. I thought it would be like at the least 3. But here we are now.
I feel like I was almost expecting like something similar to what we got when he returned from the DL the first time, where what did he go 5 or 6 or whatever it was. But I feel like that was more like you're still going to pull him out when he has more in the tank, but still kind of pitch him. But then I also heard something saying that they're going to kind of ramp him up to getting those 6 or 7 innings before the playoffs start. So who knows? But do you think that there is a value to this? Like if you look at Alex Cora's strategy here of being conservative, we have the lead. Do you think that's going to matter, or is there something to say about not really slowing down, not taking your foot off the gas, and just kind of powering through to the playoffs?
Yeah, I think my current stand on it, I'll probably laugh at in 3 weeks, because honestly, right now, I want Chris Sale to win the Cy Young. And it's something that I think he deserves. It's something that I think not a lot of people are talking about. Having said that, in like 3 weeks, I can almost guarantee you that, I'm going to say, why the hell did I care about the Cy Young? Who cares? The point is, the point of us watching all these games, the point of us doing the podcast is to celebrate a World Series. So ideally, he's good to go in the World Series, or in the World Series. Yeah, in the World Series. Let's just say that they make it there. Ideally, he's good to go in the postseason. And to do that, you're going to have to, start loosening him up, start warming him up, and start getting him ready for 6, 7, 8 inning appearances. And if this is how they do it, this is how they do it. I think it's smart. I mean, Chris Sale clearly in September in his career has not been great. And it's obvious he's worn down. Last year in the playoffs, he got rocked by the Astros. I understand that's an all-time team, but you want this guy to be good to go, or else the Sox are screwed. I mean, as it is, the rotation isn't deep. You're not looking at a starting rotation that's going to blow you away if you're looking at the Red Sox. So ideally, you need peak performance Chris Sale, and this is the way to do it.
And obviously the other talking point, pretty much the main talking point surrounding the Red Sox, is the bullpen. But we also know that postseason provides you with a few more options in the regular season. You'll have guys like Sale, Price, Porcello pitching more innings, going deeper into the game. That takes some of the pressure off the bullpen. We've already seen them start throwing the former starters into the bullpen. Nathan Eovaldi. I don't think Stephen Wright has officially been moved there yet, but it seems inevitable. It seems like that's what everyone's talking about. So you will round out the bullpen a little bit, but there's obviously still some concern over, how reliable some of these guys are. So how worried are you about the bullpen at this point?
If you're asking me that as a neutral fan, my answer would be the Red Sox will not win the World Series because of their bullpen. But being a Sox fan, I'm holding out that maybe some of these starters click. Maybe someone like Eovaldi that can hit 99 will click. Stephen Wright's knuckle is knuckling the right way. Maybe that'll click. I honestly think this bullpen is going to be the death of this team, but I want to be proven wrong. I want that to come back to bite me in the ass, because it's something right now where it just doesn't give you a lot of hope. Like, you think about a scenario where the Red Sox host the Yankees in the ALDS. That's not going to be an easy series. The Yankees haven't been that great in the last month. I mean, the Red Sox haven't been as dominant as they were in the last month either. So that would concern me facing that lineup, especially if Judge somehow is back. That, initial 3-week thing has become a month-plus thing, and who knows what kind of Aaron Judge they're going to have. But if you're facing the Yankees, you're facing the Astros, you're facing the Indians, like, these guys not only have playoff experience and recent deep playoff experience, they just got clutch hitters, and they got guys that do it in October and that aren't scared of the spotlight. And looking at the Red Sox during that Astros series, that bullpen's a problem. It's a problem. And it's something that if they don't figure it out, if guys don't start clicking, if even, Matty Barnes, I don't love Matty Barnes, but he has potential to help you in the bullpen. If he comes back, you have Brazier. Ideally, he keeps going the way he's gone this season. He's hit a little bit of a bump here, but he still has like a 170 ERA. I think Kimbrel's going to be fine. There are concerns about Craig Kimbrel. I'm not really that worried about him. I think he'll be just fine. He's been there, done that. I know he hasn't done any teams that have gone deep in the playoffs, but he's a guy that knows how to dominate when it matters most, and I'm not worried about him. But outside of Chris Sale, Kimbrel, and even my boy David Price, who I clearly love, there's not a ton of pitchers that you can look at and really trust. And I want to trust Rick Porcello, but he's been such a roller coaster this year. So even outside the bullpen, there's still a good amount of questions in the starting rotation. So that's probably something that's going to come back to kill him. If you ask neutral Steve, I would say that's the reason to say they don't win the World Series. But if they can somehow piece it together, then I'll put this Red Sox lineup up with anybody in baseball.
Well, it's funny just hearing you talk about that because it reminds me, in the intro of this podcast, I went on a rant basically about how here's all the reasons why the Cowboys are going to fail this season, but I hope I'm wrong because I'm a Cowboys fan. So it's like the same thing where you like your brain is telling you so many things, but also it's like this is why we watch the games. Like who knows, they might pull it off at the end there. I don't know. So that's how I feel about the Red Sox. That's how I feel about the Cowboys. So I don't know. I'm in turmoil right now.
No, I mean that's what you should be as a fan. Like this is why we do this, because if it was all chalk, then we wouldn't be as big of fans as we are. This is why we do it, because you want to be surprised. You want to see things that you didn't expect. And in 2013, I don't think anyone expected Koji Uehara to fly through the postseason. So you never know. You never know what you're going to get. You never know what guys are going to dominate when the lights are the brightest. So yeah, I'm interested to see what they can do. But down the stretch is going to be important. Even if you have an 8-9 game lead on the Yankees, you're going to be in some, potential playoff deciding games. Let's say the A's get closer to the Yankees. That might decide who hosts that wild card game. The Indians, the AL Central stinks. Like they're going to have that division locked up in a couple of days. So I guess it's not going to matter as much when they face the Indians, but there are going to be some games down the stretch here that have significance, and that core is going to treat like potential playoff games, situation wise. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, the bullpen is currently keeping me up at night. So ideally it is not an issue moving forward.
I'm actually surprised the Indians haven't clinched already. I think they're up like 15 and a half games right now or something. So their
magic. It's going to be within a week. Their magic numbers are on 4 or 5. Okay. So it's laughable though. The Twins are in second and they're like 16 games under 500. So that division stinks.
Well, I remember at one point too, the Indians were either sub 500 or right at 500 and still winning the division. So that division has stunk all year. Yeah. And by the way, I'll just say this: with Aaron Judge, the first place, there's some girl that either wrote into your show or something, and she said that I had the same injury. It took me forever to come. That's the first place I heard like that angle of it, and sure enough, he's still not back. I know like Hubs and everyone's freaking out because he's swinging a bat, but it didn't look particularly fluid. Like it doesn't seem like he's going to be back, and if he is, it seems like it's going to be a limited role, I would think.
Yeah, that's kind of one of my favorite things, and you'll see this happen occasionally on Boston Talk Radio, where it'll be like, guys, like let me tell you, like I had the same exact injury in college, and I was not the same the rest of my life. I'm 55 now, and this is kind of what it sounded like this girl was sending us out. She had this like 3 years ago, and she was saying she hasn't been the same. So who knows? I like reading those DMs off just because it kind of makes me chuckle, makes the guys chuckle. But at the end of the day, he still hasn't swung a bat. He still hasn't taken BP. He hasn't put himself in real game situations, and he's going to have to jump right back into MLB competition. There's, baseball outside of MLB is over. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens here. Like, I honestly think this could be the downfall of a Yankee team that, forget the lead. I think people are paying way too much attention to the Red Sox lead in the AL East and have been ever since that sweep of the Yankees. The Yankees are still a good team, and they still have potential to knock you out in the playoffs. And I think we're all, sometimes myself included, getting a little too high on what the Red Sox are doing in the regular season. Come playoff time, cliche or not, you wipe the slate clean, and everyone has the same record. So I don't think by any means, you should count the Yankees out. Healthy Judge or no healthy Judge, that's a team that could still beat you. So who knows? We'll see what happens. But without Aaron Judge, they're obviously a much easier team to beat.
Yeah, it's a weird thing, too, where someone, say he comes back in a limited role and he doesn't start, but you put him in clutch situations. I almost think sometimes that works to your advantage. Like, you want him in there for as many bats as you can get. Obviously, he's Aaron Judge. But also, like, sometimes it's like, all right, but if the bases are loaded in the 8th inning and you're at the bottom of the order and you could sub Aaron Judge in that situation, I think sometimes in a playoff run, like, that can make a difference as well. And I'll say, not knowing that girl or the hypothetical 55-year-old radio personality or whatever, Aaron Judge is probably a better athlete than both of them. So like you never know, just because she didn't come back. Like I think Aaron Judge might be able to. He probably has better treatment. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, there is a good chance that he has better doctors, but you never know. She might have been D1. Who knows what kind of team they had there? So yeah, it's more than likely that the Yankees and basically all of New York are doing everything physically possible to make sure Aaron Judge is ready to go come playoff time. But ideally, from our perspective, he's not.
Yeah, for sure. And I will say this. We do need to touch on the National League just because it is razor close, and we'll wrap it up on that. But close races all around, so let's go division by division. You tell me who you think ends up in the postseason. Starting with the NL East, the Braves have the biggest division leads, 5 games over the Phillies, 8.5 games over the Nationals. Do you think that one's locked up? Because that's definitely the biggest gap.
Yeah, I don't think the Phillies have any chance of catching the Braves. I mean, Acuna's been awesome. I don't honestly, like during the season, I lock in big time on the American League, and then normally August, September is when I focus most on the NL and, potential targets for who the Red Sox could play down the line. And that kid is amazing. Like just watching him play, he has a swagger to him. There's not a ton of guys in baseball that have that swag, and he has this flair, this swagger. He already set the record for leadoff homers in Braves history. The kid, did all of that in the second half. So that's a team to watch out for. Even though the Red Sox swept him, that's a team that could do some damage, #damage in the National League. So I think the NL East is wrapped up. I'd be shocked if the Braves didn't win that.
Well, they're scary too because I think they're good this year. I think they'll win this year, but also they're stacked for the future. So they'll be a team to watch out for the next decade.
Could have another run of winning the NL East 10 years in a row. Who knows?
Right, exactly. Now the other two divisions are very close. NL East is close. It doesn't feel that way. The other two are even closer though. So the NL Central, you've got the Cubs in first, but the Brewers are just a game back. They're playing right now. They played yesterday, and the Brewers won, so they're closing the gap. They could even take the lead if they sweep the Cubs. So you have that going on. You also have the Cardinals. They're only 3.5 games back from the lead. Also sitting in that second wild card spot right now, so that's kind of a tight race too. But how do you think the NL Central shakes out?
Yeah, I honestly think as we look at the National League, I still kind of expect all the teams in first to hold suit. I know the Cubs only have a game lead on the Brewers, but the Cubs have obviously been there, done that. I think Javi Baez has a very good chance of winning the MVP. Yelich obviously is going to put his hat in the ring too. But the Brewers, I even though it's a different club, if you ask people in Milwaukee, I'm sure they expect the worst, as always happens with that team. They'll probably end up in that wild card game, and even if they host it, that's still not going to be any guarantee that they win it. Ideally they do, and Jared obviously is pulling for them with that being his quote unquote National League team. But yeah, as it sets up right now, you'd have the Brewers hosting the Cardinals, so technically 3 teams in that division making the playoffs. But I kind of expect that to stay as is. I think the Cubs have had too good a season. They haven't been as hot. They've cooled off a little bit lately, but I could honestly see the Cubs. I expect the Cubs to make the World Series. Even though their pitching has dipped a little bit, they just have, I don't know. They have the it factor, and honestly, in the NL, there's not a lot of teams with the it factor this year. I think there's a lot of good teams. I don't think there's any great team. You could make the case that there's 2 great teams in the American League, and you can throw the Yankees in there too. But I don't really see any team in the National League that's way above the next one. But if I were to pick, I'd have the Cubs coming out of the National League and holding on to the NL Central division.
All right, and then finally the NL West. The Rockies are in first. The Dodgers are a game and a half back, and the Diamondbacks are 2 games back from that. Who wins it, and do you think out of those other 2 teams, someone can basically dethrone? Right now it would be the Cardinals, but the Cardinals, the Brewers, all in the mix for the wild card there. Do you think that someone from the NL West could take a wild card spot as well?
Yeah, if I were to just pick 2 of these squads, I would love to see if you could ever get Dodgers Cardinals in the wild card game. I think that would be awesome, headlines wise and history wise. I'm obsessed with baseball history, so having 2 fan bases like that going up against each other in a 1-game playoff would be pretty awesome. So I'm pulling for that. It's unlikely. There's a chance though. Milwaukee has a 2.5 game lead on St. Louis, 4.5 on the Dodgers. So it's unlikely that Milwaukee would fall behind LA, but who knows? Colorado's lead is, only a couple over the Dodgers anyway. If that, it might even be 1. Is it a 1-game lead?
1.5.
That they have
1.5 right now.
1.5. Okay, so I love Nolan Arenado. He's my favorite player in baseball. That's not on the Red Sox. So I want them to do well. I want him to do well. It's a fun team to watch. I like the Colorado aspect too. I like the Coors Field aspect. It adds another layer to a playoff series. That was a lot of fun to watch, 11 years ago now in 2007. And that place gets rowdy around playoff time and around September. And I'm pulling for them to win the West. Both my brothers are out in LA. So on the wild chance that I could go out to Los Angeles for a Dodgers Red Sox World Series, I'm pulling for that. So Yeah, and in a perfect world, it would be the Rockies win the West, and the Dodgers somehow find a way to the World Series, which would be a tough trip. They'd have to win the wild card game, likely in Milwaukee, and then they'd have to go through the Cubs. They'd have to go through the Braves. I mean, it would be tough, but whatever team's going to come out of the NL is going to earn it. I still expect it to be the Cubs, but I wouldn't mind a little, Cubs-Dodgers rematch or three-match. It feels like they play each other every year in the playoffs now. I would like to see them face again in the playoffs.
And then from a Section 10 perspective, do you guys have anything special planned? I know you talked about maybe calling a game, things like that. Is there any sort of special postseason plan in place?
Yeah, the biggest thing we're trying to do is the live show in Boston. Ideally, it's going to be during the Yankees series to close out the regular season. Obviously, this kind of stuff can get tricky. Scheduling's tricky. Like even with Cora trying to line that up, we had to make sure that we got it right. But we always got a couple tricks up our sleeve. I mean, we're always looking for the next guest. We're likely, now that we got Cora, we'll be able to get more players through the Red Sox, which is great. It's great to start with Cora because then it's just kind of, you're starting at the top and you're going down from there. So if you start with the manager, and I'm sure Alex told these guys that everything went well, and that's always good for our case, because he wants to do a second part of the interview, third part. So we're going to try to get as many interviews as possible. And the next month and a half, 2 months, ideally, it leads to the World Series, because that would be great for content. It would be great for everybody listening and everybody that follows the show. So we'll have a lot of things lined up, but it should be fun. I mean, this is going to be a hell of a ride. So ideally, the Red Sox make it out of the ALDS. That would be sweet. But yeah, we're going to be hoping for a deep playoff run, and we'll have a lot of stuff ready to go.
Well, again, I feel like we talked about this, but you guys hitting your sweet spot now, I think, with the three of you hosting, and everything just seems like it's going well right now. Obviously, Barstool keeps growing bigger and bigger as well, so it would always mean a lot to Section 10 if the Red Sox won the World Series, but I feel like this year in particular, it would be kind of the perfect year. I think everything's on an upswing. It would all kind of come together at the same time, so obviously, not just for you guys, just for my fandom, I'm also rooting for that, but I feel like it would be an amazing thing. So yeah,
I mean, that would be perfect. It would be perfect to line up. I mean, the shirts would be insane. I'll tell you that right now. Like we'd have a ton of shirts ready to go. But I think it just kind of feels like this would be the best year for it. I mean, every year technically is a great year to win the World Series, but if we were to pick one, the team that has the most wins in Red Sox history, the podcast has never been higher, and Barstool continues to rise. So I think this would be the best time to do it, and hopefully it happens.
Yeah, for sure, man. Do you want to plug anything, by the way? I mean, I feel like people will probably...
No. I mean, you can follow my Twitter, but it's just my name. Yeah, nothing too crazy there. And then Section 10 Pod if you don't follow Section 10. But yeah, man, I appreciate you having me on, and let's do it again during the playoffs.
For sure, man. I appreciate the time. I'm a big fan of what you guys do, obviously. And by the way, I recently sent you a picture of me rocking the podcast shirt in the fjords in Norway. So if and when you guys do the Section 10 world map, I'm hoping to have a spot on it.
That is perfect. Yeah, I mean that's been my favorite part of the summer. Like it's insane, man. Like we'll wake up, I'll wake up to the notifications and checking, who liked what, who retweeted what, and all of a sudden we got somebody in Japan, we got somebody in France, we got somebody in Canada. It's like we got people all over the globe. And that's really been a cool sign and just a fun thing to share with everybody that listens. So ideally, we'll have you on there. Ideally, we can get every country now. That's the next goal. We got to take over the world.
That's what I'm saying. I went from Boston calling in front of the concession stand and then went right to Norway. So I feel like I really ramped it up fast. But yeah, no, it's the first thing. We went on this huge hike and I was like, I had to pack my shirt. And I heard you guys mention that too. Like other people have been doing that. And it's like a weird thing, but it's just fun. It's like a fun little sub community of Red Sox fans, which already feels like a community.
No, absolutely. I mean, that's something we've tried to build, and my goal and our goal really is to keep that as strong as we can. I mean, it's unlike any other baseball team I've seen. We have a closer bond with the people that listen and kind of with the group that we've built than any other team in baseball. So ideally we can keep that going, and every country, we got to get every country. That is a must.
I recently heard there's not that many. There's like 250 or something. So I'm pretty sure you can do it.
It's fine.
I thought it was more.
We'll figure it out. If it's 250, we'll get it probably by next season. Honestly,
yeah, no problem. All right. Well, yeah, I appreciate the time. Obviously, I'd love to have you back on, and best of luck to you and the Red Sox.
All right, appreciate it, man. Take care.
Bum, 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 bum.
What's up? Welcome to the after show. So this is going to be in the sports podcast. This is like episode 2, so people just listened to Steve Perrault of Barstool Sports. This is the after show. Last time I did one with Kevin and Nate, and we did like a back porch patio type deal. It was kind of fun. This time I'm joined by Monica, who has been on a bunch of these shows. If you guys have listened to my MMA show, she's been on that a bunch of times too, from Outside the Bubble. So, once again, she's going to lend her sports expertise to the podcast. Welcome, first of all.
Hi.
Even though we just did a podcast that people don't know about, might not even get released. We'll see. That took an interesting turn. What?
You don't want to release that?
You told me not to release it, but I think I'll be able to...
I think it's a little embarrassing for you.
Yeah, but I think I'll be able to salvage it. For me?
Yeah.
No, I don't know. I read the book and watched the show to its completion.
Well, if you think it's useful for the public... I don't care about embarrassment. Definitely nobody knows who I am.
I don't know about that. I feel like you're making your footprint in the podcasting world. I've been saying that. So I want to get into your fantasy team. You drafted it 2 days ago, right? You said, but
yeah.
We'll get into that at the end. We'll get to that eventually. But I wanted to dive into that. I thought it'd be a good way to talk about football, which obviously, actually, this is going to get released Sunday night. So we would have just watched all the Sunday games. So it's like week 1 of football is almost done at this point. For us, it's Wednesday night, and it's tomorrow is the start of it, and I just can't wait. So I'm excited for it, but we'll get to that later. First, I wanted to talk about The Shop, which is a show on HBO. It's got LeBron James and a bunch of people talking about social issues and stuff. They're sitting around the barbershop. Not the most, unique or original idea, but people are really praising it because it's it's important. They're having these conversations. Now, there's a new episode tonight, Wednesday, so it would have already come out 4 days ago by the time anyone's listening. But the big moment from the first one was Odell Beckham Jr. Do you know who that is, by the way, on the Giants? Okay. He was basically complaining about being famous, and it rubbed a lot of people the wrong way because it's listen, man, you're getting paid millions of dollars, you chose this, whatever. So this will be interesting. So I'm going to play you clips like we used to do, but for the YouTube version, I think it'll get pulled off YouTube if we keep those clips. So I'm going to have to edit it out or figure out something. So if you're listening on YouTube, there's probably a sound effect or something that'll go to it. If you're listening to the podcast, obviously you'll hear the audio from the clip. But either way, this is the little clip from Odell Beckham. All right. So I guess, do you have sympathy for somebody? So, all right. So I don't know how familiar you are with Odell, but he literally, he's all over Instagram, literally dancing. He does hands-on dancing celebrations every single chance he has. Now I hate him because I'm a Cowboys fan, so I'm very biased. But every chance he has, he's got his helmet off. He's got the cool hair that sparked a whole hairstyle. I feel like people call it the Odell Beckham when you see people doing that hairstyle with the blonde on top and whatever. So it's he clearly wants all the attention in certain situations, but then, and I understand he wants privacy, but if he's walking through an airport and someone sees Odell and comes up, just where do you stand on that in general? Because I feel like you don't. You have no ambitions to be famous at all. That sounds like a nightmare to you, people doing that. But also, he kind of asked for it, so.
Right. So, coming from someone that would be a nightmare for, then don't put yourself out there, right? There's plenty of football players that are good that maybe aren't as popular. I don't know. But I know his name. So, he's out there. Well, if you're saying he's posting things on Instagram and, trying to get this kind of fame and then doesn't want people coming up, it's kind of your own fault. If you keep to yourself, you stay off social media, I feel like it's going to be less bothersome.
Yeah, and he's definitely that guy. He's he wants to be the superstar, biggest name in the sport. So
then you have to take it.
Yeah, he asked for it. I agree.
Yeah.
And people compared it to someone like Calvin Johnson or something who's on the Detroit Lions or was, and probably the best receiver in the league for the 4 or 5 years he's in the league. I don't think he would get recognized walking down somewhere. They might recognize him as an athlete because he just looks like an athlete. He's a big dude. But I don't think people would recognize him in general, and they definitely wouldn't. Somebody might, but it doesn't happen everywhere he goes. Whereas Odell Beckham, I feel like even you would be oh, I know that guy. He has a look that he's So I don't know. I don't have a lot of sympathy for it. I think it's annoying. But this will be an old story, but I didn't talk about The Shop before, so I thought I'd get into it. But I don't know. It'd be interesting to see. In the preview, they have him on. They just show a bunch of people, and we saw all those people in episode 1. So episode 2, I don't know if it's going to be the same exact people or whatever. Right. So it'll be interesting, but I don't know. That annoyed me a little bit. And then the other controversial thing that you probably caught wind of, just because it's a huge story. Did you hear about the Colin Kaepernick Nike stuff? Or no?
No.
Monica, you are one of a kind. This is literally I'm annoyed because I can't escape it. It's everywhere. We operate in different bubbles. That's the whole scheme. So Nike made Colin Kaepernick the face of their new ad campaign, and it's really controversial because Colin Kaepernick's the guy who was kneeling during the national anthem, and it became the whole story in the NFL. And he basically has become a full-on activist. He's not in the league anymore. He, I think, is suing the NFL for blackballing him, even though I'm of the opinion that he's just not that good. So if he's why would you have somebody who's going to bring all this media attention to your team just to have him be a backup quarterback? Doesn't make any sense. So I get it. I don't think it's like some conspiracy. I think people just don't want him on the podcast or on their team. I mean, so I don't know. But here, first I'll show you the ad. So anyway, Nike released his ad campaign. There's like a bunch of other people too. I think they're all like black and white, like dramatic photos and whatever. But this is like the controversial one. And people are basically going around like burning their Nike shoes, which is like the dumbest thing in the world. Like there's one. I'll show you one clip of a kid who is burning his Nike shoes, and he looks like the most spoiled brat kid ever. Like it's just like so hard to like get by. He's like, I'm burning it
because they don't like Colin.
Yes, because Colin Kaepernick is apparently represents like anti-American, anti-patriotism, like disrespecting the flag. Whereas like a lot of people are like, no, this was what America's all about. Like you should be able to. He's like peacefully protesting. He's taking a knee during the national anthem versus like having a riot or staging like some roadblock or something. You know what I mean? So it's like. It is like the most passive, peaceful protest ever, but like it's become this huge issue of, especially with like football fans. Like football fans are like red-blooded Americans, and like they get really offended by this shit. Yeah. So that I'll show you a clip of the kid with the Nikes, and then my favorite. Do you know the band Big and Rich? Like it's like a country band, I think. So one of the guys from that posted. He did this whole Twitter rant about how it's ridiculous, but then he posted one picture of his like cameraman or somebody or some roadie guy or something, sound guy maybe. Cutting the top of his socks off, so the swoosh wasn't on his socks anymore, and it's the dumbest picture ever. So I'll show you both of those. That's the gist of it. Huge douchebag, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I like when he's like, "Take that, Nike." Like he like says that when he throws the first one in there. Like that kid sucks. But also you'll notice it's like Americans, like everyone's burning their shoes. If you look up the shoe burning videos that people are talking about, burning your Nikes, there's maybe 2 or 3 videos that have gotten passed around from like the entire nation. So I don't think like everyone's throwing their Nikes in the fire. It's like the media's blowing that up.
I have so many Nikes.
Yeah, well, you're not gonna throw them in the fire.
Certainly not. They're my
There's
work
one
shoes.
Is a very funny video, but it's too long, so I decided not to do it. But it's like this old guy talking about it, and right in the middle, he like trips and falls into a bush, and he's like, "Whoa!" and then like gets back into talking trash. Except he didn't want to burn them because he didn't want to pollute the air with plastic, so he threw them in the trash because Nike is trash. And I also think that means that he just took them right back out after the video because nobody's going to throw all those away. And also, the guy, like, it's a brag to be like, all right, here's my 6 pair of Nike shoes that I have. Like, it's like, I just bought these. And it's like, all right, so you're just some rich kid. Like, no one gives a shit about you. So, yeah, so that's annoying. But there is, like, a lot of backlash. Not a lot of people doing that, but there's a lot of backlash with, like, I don't know, just people on Twitter sounding off bullshit like that. But, oh, actually, before I get to the big and rich guy, I wanted to read. So, El Prez has a take on Colin Kaepernick that I think is just like very spot on. I don't know how I'm going to do this though. All right. So he talks about the Nike thing. It's just like a brilliant business move because everyone's talking about Nike, which I agree with. And then on Colin Kaepernick, he said, "Now for starters, let me just say I don't like Colin Kaepernick. It's not because I have a fundamental problem with players kneeling. It's just I don't think he would have ever taken a knee if he was a starting QB for the 49ers. I'm convinced he was sort of sulking and just trying to draw attention to himself. And when it blew into a huge controversy, he had nothing to lose by continuing because his days as a productive QB were already behind him. So I think he's a false hero. That quote about him risking it all just rings hollow to me because he had already lost what he had. If he did this protest on the way to leading the 49ers to the Super Bowl, I feel very differently about him. Now, obviously, I don't know the man, but it's just my gut instinct on the situation," which I feel like is like spot on. Like I think he was, I don't know, like if he literally like, and that's not even like a bullshit thing either. He led the 49ers to the Super Bowl a year before all this or 2 years before all that, and he wasn't like protesting then. So
right. So like he had already lost it. Like he had nothing else to lose.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that like means that he like doesn't believe in this cause. It's just like I don't think he would have risked it all. I think he would have been like, all right, I want to win a Super Bowl. So I don't know. Tough to say. But what's your stance on Nike having him do that, or just like him doing like the kneeling in general or whatever? How do you feel about that?
I feel like it's such like a polarizing issue. Like people are so for it and then people are so against it that Nike took a risk having him like on their face of advertisement, but like there's going to be people who support Nike for it.
Yeah, that's what they're saying.
It's like I feel like people are so cut 50-50 against this issue that like not everyone, like I don't know, I feel like they'll gain support, they'll like earn people's business just the same as they're losing it. Yeah,
well they're saying like even there's so many athletes that have come out and like retweeted this advertisement just for free, like people who aren't even sponsored by Nike, and it's like that's why you do that.
Yeah.
And somehow you missed all this, but it's been in the news like everywhere nonstop for like the week, and it's like why else? Like I didn't see anything about Adidas this week. Like Nike's everywhere, and I feel like that's kind of like the point.
Yeah,
super hot in here. Yeah. So then this is the big and rich guy And the tweet says, our sound man just cut the Nike swoosh off his socks. Former Marine. First of all, no such thing. If once Marine, always Marine. That's like a big Marine thing. So that was offensive. Get ready, Nike. Multiply that by the millions. So basically, there's going to be an epidemic of people cutting off their socks.
And stop.
Do you think that's going to
stop buying socks?
Get through to Nike? Also, if you cut the ankles off your socks, they're going to fall down your feet.
Yeah, that sounds annoying.
Yeah. Maybe
I think it was symbolism.
Yeah, so that'll be enough on the Colin Kaepernick issues. I'm sick of it.
I'm like stuck to the couch.
Yeah, I know. I feel like that's a staple of our podcast. All right, well, we've got the U.S. Open going on. Well, actually, it's going on right now. It'll be over by the time you guys listen, so I guess go Serena. Tiger Woods made the Ryder Cup team alongside your boy Ricky Fowler. The team is captained by Jim Furyk, and there's a big debate about who's more handsome. Everyone's talking about it. Do you know what Jim Furyk looks like, by the way?
I don't think so.
All right, so I got a picture for it. You can decide.
Who versus who?
Jim Furyk versus Ricky Fowler.
Is that a joke?
No.
What?
Everyone's like, who's more handsome? And it's like, I don't know. And people are like, it's a really heated 50-50 debate. Yeah. Who's more handsome?
Ricky.
Oh, okay. Strong disagree. He's my favorite golfer by a mile, by the way. All right. So, I mean, Jim Furyk's a stud. He's sponsored by 5 Hour Energy because he's so energetic and youthful.
So youthful.
Yeah, but football is finally back. Hard Knocks is over. I didn't really love this season. I didn't really have an emotional attachment to the people on the bubble. So like the big like hook to Hard Knocks to me is they have these people who are like fighting for a spot on the team, and they basically spend the 5 episodes like getting you invested in them. But then like I didn't care about these guys, so they got cut, and I didn't care, which is like defeats the whole purpose.
Yeah.
I am invested in the Browns, however, because I have Tyrod Taylor, or Tyrod apparently is what his actual name is. They talked about it on the show. And Baker Mayfield on my fantasy team. So I'm invested in the team, but just not that. But speaking of fantasy, we alluded to it. You drafted your team, so I'm going to go through it. I'm like looking at it for the first time, so I don't know what. I know you got Edelman, which we talked about. I think that's actually a good pick, though, but we'll get into it.
Thanks.
So let me just run down your starters, I guess. Quarterback, Jimmy Garoppolo. Devontae Adams, wide receiver. I also have him, by the way. Saquon Barkley. A lot of people are saying, I skipped one. Doug Baldwin at the other wide receiver. Saquon Barkley at running back, which I feel like I can predict what pick you were, but I'll get there in a second. Josh Howard. No. Who is that? Can you click on that?
Jordan Howard,
sorry.
Bears.
Njoku, Derrick Henry, Julian Edelman. Who's the New England running back? Because they have like 3. Shawnee?
Sony Michael.
Oh, Sony Michael. Okay, Sony Michael. Jordy Nelson, Alex Smith, Prater. Okay. So I'm going to predict that your pick was 3.
4.
So who? Oh, you probably wouldn't know. I'm just curious because Saquon Barkley must have been like your first pick, right? I would assume. The running back. You don't remember?
I don't remember.
Your first pick?
I don't remember.
It must have been Saquon Barkley.
Sorry.
Now I hate him and I'm rooting against him because he's a giant, but he's like supposed to be one of the best running backs in the league this year, and I think that he probably will be. So congratulations.
Thanks.
I think Jimmy Garoppolo is being slept on. I think he's great. Did you pick him because of the Patriots connection or just like coincidence?
He was
the best available.
Yeah, like by the time I went to QB, I didn't necessarily want him, but
okay. Why? Did you like him on the Patriots? Or
I did actually.
Okay, there you go. I feel like he's really good. So like people are almost forgetting. I looked at like the 49ers record this year is supposed to be like a 500 team or something, or maybe they're supposed to win like nine games and lose 7. But
I feel like I don't watch 49ers games,
yeah,
so like
no
it's
does,
like
the West Coast,
yeah. So it's kind of like to have him. You know what I mean? Which is means nothing to the fantasy team, but it's kind of boring for me.
No, I got you. Like you'd almost rather have like, even though you don't like them, almost like a Giant because Giants games are like on and
or like Tom.
Yeah, I don't see any Cowboys on here, by the way. It's probably a smart choice.
You know
this
what?
year.
I almost had Dax.
Dak.
Well, I'm thinking like that.
Dez.
Oh, okay.
Dak's the quarterback.
Oh my God.
It's confusing. That's all right.
I almost had one of them.
Who'd you almost have? Now you don't even know.
Now I don't know because you confused me.
Dez Bryant was a free. He was like.
No, I almost had Dak Shepard.
Dak Prescott.
Dak
Shepard?
No.
Okay. That's okay. Dak Prescott.
Yeah, okay, I almost had him.
Yeah.
And he was in my queue, and then someone took him right before I did.
You're better off. Jimmy Garoppolo is much better. Yes, yeah. I think Dak Prescott sucks, and it's really unfortunate. I don't know. Everyone seems to be in love with him and like the team and stuff, and I just think he sucks. Like I've never seen him throw it further than like 5 yards down the field, so he annoys me. Did someone pick up Des Bryant in your league? Because if not, you should do it right now. Although that's becoming a more risky proposition now that I think about it.
Why?
Because so he's not on a team right now, but you would think if he ends up on a team, he'd be like the number one guy. But now I'm seeing like more and more stuff about he might not end up on a team. But
I don't think he's on a team.
For you? Okay, I think I would still pick him up and like drop your worst bench guy.
Okay. But
we can do that after. All right, I think it's a pretty good team. Devontae Adams, I have on my team too. I kept him, so he was like a 7th round keeper or something, but now he's like the top guy on the Packers, so that's good. They're basically throwing away all their talent in Oakland, and Jordy Nelson's probably going to end up being pretty good because he is good, and now he's on a team with like no other options, basically. And Julian Edelman, you said you got him in the 4th round. I feel like that's like a good spot for him because people forget, like whenever that happens, someone's out, they're really talented, but they're out for 4 games. You just need to like pull off like 2 out of those 4 games, and then you have an overvalued guy. Because like you can't get Julian Edelman in the 4th round probably if he wasn't suspended. So now once it's week 5, then it's like you got like this really valuable guy for whatever. But you say you did it
Thanks for supporting me. I just love him, and you know that.
And you did it for the team name, so you said.
My jersey, all of the above.
Jersey? Oh, you have Edelman jersey. Mm-hmm. Right. And you were talking shit to Kevin that one time. About Edelman,
yeah.
And it worked out for you too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How'd it work out last year? So, by the way, tomorrow, your least favorite team at the moment, I would assume, the Philadelphia Eagles, take the field against the Atlanta Falcons, the guys that you beat in the previous game. What are the odds of that? Yeah. Former opponents of yours. I've already come out, I guess, so I don't know. All right. Well, that'll do it for this show. A little after show. Do you have any other sports talk you want to get into?
Not really. Okay. You covered it.
I got it all. All right. I hope you guys enjoyed. Rate, review, subscribe. Tell a friend about this podcast. We're going to keep coming out with these every single Monday, I think. Sunday night, Monday morning. And we're going to always have a guest on. We're always going to do some sort of after show thing where I shoot the shit. Brief intro where I cover whatever the most relevant stuff is because we pre-record a lot of these. And then, I want to actually do some sort of relevant, more topical stuff like the day before I release it. So that'll all be part of the structure, although I'm sure it'll change and evolve as the show goes. My name is Nick Rizner. You can find me on Twitter at Nick Rizner, NickRizner. The website is thedisorderly.com. The best in sports entertainment. You can find us on Facebook at Disorderly ENT, Twitter at Disorderly Media, and that'll do it. So yeah, subscribe to this podcast. That's the best way to get it right in your inbox or whatever, in your library as soon as it downloads, and that's it. That'll wrap it up. Thanks.
Bye.